The moonlight barely touched her bruised face as Olivia Vale ran through the darkened streets of Santa Fe, her feet bleeding through torn slippers, knowing that if Madame Rousseau's men caught her this time, she would not see another sunrise. The year was 1878, and she had just escaped from the gilded prison that had owned her body for 3 years, ever since she was 17 and desperate enough to believe the promises of work as a seamstress. Instead, they had taken her name, called her Ruby like all the other girls with red hair, and sold her to any man with enough silver in his pockets. She did not look back as she stumbled into the night, her lungs burning with each gasping breath. The dress they made her wear was thin and inappropriate for running, but she clutched the stolen coat around her shoulders and pushed forward. Behind her, she heard shouting, the sound of boots on wooden planks, and her heart hammered so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. The town gave way to open land, and Olivia kept moving, driven by pure survival instinct. She had grown up on a small farm in Missouri before her parents died of fever, before the world became cruel and hungry. She knew how to endure. She knew how to survive. But she did not know where she was going, only that anywhere was better than the red velvet rooms where she had lost herself piece by piece. Dawn found her collapsed near a creek, her body giving out from exhaustion. She drank deeply from the cold water, washing the paint from her face, scrubbing until her skin hurt. When she looked at her reflection in the water, she barely recognized the hollow-eyed woman staring back. She was 20 years old, and she felt ancient. The sound of horses approaching made her freeze. She scrambled behind a cluster of rocks, her heart racing again, prepared to run despite her body's protests. But the riders who appeared were not the rough enforcers from the brothel. 3 men rode into view, cowboys by the look of them, dusty and weather-worn, leading a small herd of cattle toward the creek for water. The man in front sat tall in his saddle, his hat pulled low against the rising sun. Even from her hiding place, Olivia could see the easy confidence in the way he moved, like someone who belonged to this wild land. He dismounted with fluid grace, and when he removed his hat to wipe his brow, she saw he was young, maybe 25, with dark hair and a face that spoke of both strength and something gentler. "Water them here," he called to his companions, his voice carrying clearly across the morning air. "We will rest an hour before pushing on to Chisholm Ranch." Chisholm Ranch. Olivia had heard the name before, somewhere in the fog of her captivity. A cattle operation in New Mexico territory, she thought, though she could not be certain. Her geography had become hazy over the years. She tried to remain still, but her body betrayed her with a violent shiver. The movement dislodged a small stone that clattered down the rocks, and immediately all 3 men turned toward the sound. The leader's hand went to his gun with practiced speed, and Olivia found herself looking down the barrel of a revolver. "Come out," he said, his voice steady but not cruel. Slowly. She had no choice. On trembling legs, Olivia emerged from behind the rocks, raising her hands to show she meant no harm. She must have looked like a ghost, she thought, with her torn dress and wild hair and bare, bleeding feet. The cowboy's expression changed the moment he saw her. The gun lowered, and something like concern flickered across his features. "Madam," he said carefully, holstering his weapon. "Are you hurt?" The question was so unexpected, so genuinely kind that Olivia felt tears spring to her eyes. She tried to speak, but her voice came out as a croak. "Please," she managed, "do not send me back." The 2 other cowboys exchanged glances, but the leader stepped closer, his movements slow and deliberate like he was approaching a frightened horse. "Back where?" he asked. She could not say it, could not force the shameful words past her lips. Instead, she just shook her head and the tears came faster. She hated herself for crying, for showing weakness, but she could not stop. "My name is Lucas Tanner," the cowboy said gently. "These are my men, Joseph and William. We work cattle on Chisholm Ranch, about 2 days' ride from here." "You look like you could use some help." "I have no money," Olivia whispered. "Nothing to pay you with." Something hardened in Lucas Tanner's eyes, but not with anger, with understanding. "I am not asking for payment, madam. I am offering help." He turned to his men. "Joseph, bring one of the spare blankets and the canteen. William, see if we have any extra boots in the packs." As his men moved to comply, Lucas kept his distance, clearly aware that she was terrified. "Can you tell me your name?" he asked. She hesitated. Ruby was what they called her, but Ruby was not who she was. Ruby was the painted girl in the red velvet room. Ruby was not real. "Olivia," she said finally, her voice stronger. "Olivia Vale." "Miss Vale," Lucas said with a slight nod, and something inside her chest loosened at hearing her real name spoken with respect. "When did you last eat?" She could not remember. A day, 2. Time had become strange during her flight. Before she could answer, her stomach responded with an audible growl, and mortification flooded her face with heat. Lucas did not react except to turn and call to William. "Bring some of the jerky and hardtack too." Then back to Olivia. "It is not much, but it will help until we can get you proper food." Joseph returned with the blanket, which Lucas took and held out to her at arm's length, letting her come to him rather than approaching. She took it gratefully, wrapping it around her shoulders over the stolen coat. The blanket smelled like leather and campfire smoke and something clean, and she pulled it tighter. William brought the boots, which were too large but better than nothing, and the food, which Olivia forced herself to eat slowly, even though her body screamed for her to devour it all at once. The 3 men busied themselves with the cattle, giving her space and privacy, and she was grateful beyond words for their consideration. When she had eaten and drunk her fill, Lucas approached again, his hat in his hands. "Miss Vale, I do not know what you are running from, and you do not have to tell me if you do not want to. But I can offer you safe passage to Chisholm Ranch. It is a big operation, always in need of workers. The owner, John Chisholm, is a fair man. If you want work, I believe I can help arrange it." Olivia stared at him, searching his face for deception, for the hidden price she would be expected to pay. But she saw only honest concern and something else, something that looked like determination, as if he had decided her welfare was now his responsibility. "Why would you help me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Lucas was quiet for a moment, then said, "My sister was about your age when she died. Cholera took her 5 years back. I was not there to help her when she needed it most, and that is something I will carry always. But I am here now, and you need help, and that is enough reason for me." The raw honesty in his words cut through her defenses. She had spent 3 years surrounded by lies and false affection, and men who took what they wanted without conscience. This cowboy with his steady eyes and gentle voice was something different, something she had thought no longer existed in the world. "What kind of work?" she asked carefully. "Ranch work. Cooking, cleaning, mending, helping with the books if you can read and write. Honest work for honest pay." He paused. "No one will touch you or hurt you. You have my word on that." Olivia wanted to believe him so badly it hurt. "And if I cannot do the work well enough, if I am not what they need, then we will figure something else out," Lucas said simply. "But I think you are stronger than you know, Miss Vale. Anyone who survives what you clearly have is not lacking in strength or determination." She nodded slowly, making the decision that would change her life. "I will come with you, and please call me Olivia. I am tired of titles and pretense." Something like a smile touched Lucas's lips. Olivia, then, and you can call me Lucas." They rode out within the hour, Olivia seated behind Joseph on his horse because she had admitted she did not know how to ride well and was too exhausted to learn in that moment. Lucas set a steady pace, not pushing the cattle too hard, and every so often, Olivia caught him glancing back as if to make sure she was still there, still safe. They made camp that evening in a protected canyon, and Lucas showed her how to set up a bedroll near the fire. She noticed he positioned his own bedroll between her and the other men, a silent barrier of protection, and gratitude swelled in her throat. As the stars emerged overhead, brilliant and countless in the clear desert sky, Lucas brought her a tin plate of beans and salt pork. "It is not fancy," he said, settling onto a rock near the fire but not too close to her, "but it will keep you going." "It is the best meal I have had in years," Olivia said truthfully. Food she had chosen to eat, food shared freely, tasted like freedom. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the crackling fire and distant sounds of cattle the only noise. Finally, Lucas spoke. "You do not have to talk about where you came from, but if you ever want to, I will listen." Olivia stared into the flames, watching them dance and shift. Part of her wanted to keep it locked away forever, to pretend those 3 years had not happened. But another part knew that secrets festered like infected wounds. Maybe speaking the truth would help it heal. "I was in a place in Santa Fe," she began slowly. "A house where they sold women. I did not choose to be there, not really. I was fooled, promised one thing and given another. By the time I understood what was happening, I was trapped." Lucas's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, letting her continue at her own pace. "They took my name," Olivia continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. "Called me Ruby like I was a thing, not a person. For 3 years I was not myself. I was whoever they needed me to be for whatever man paid enough." She looked up from the fire, meeting Lucas's eyes. "2 nights ago I saw a chance to run and I took it. I have nothing, no money, no possessions except this stolen coat, but I have myself back and that is worth everything." "You are incredibly brave," Lucas said quietly, and the admiration in his voice was genuine. Olivia shook her head. "I am a coward. I ran away." "No," Lucas said firmly. "Running toward freedom is not cowardice. It is the bravest thing a person can do. You chose yourself, chose your life, even knowing you had nothing and nowhere to go. That takes more courage than most people will ever need in their entire lives." The tears came again, but this time they felt different, cleaner somehow, like rain washing away dust. "Thank you," she whispered, "for helping me, for seeing me as a person." "You are a person, Olivia Vale," Lucas said with quiet intensity. "Do not ever forget that. What was done to you does not define you. You define yourself." They talked late into the night, carefully avoiding the painful topics but finding common ground in other things. Lucas told her about growing up in Texas, about learning to work cattle from his father, about the open spaces and endless sky that had called to him since he was a boy. Olivia told him about Missouri, about her parents' small farm, about the books her mother had taught her to read by candlelight. "You can read, then?" Lucas asked, perking up. "That is useful. Mr. Chisholm's books are always in need of sorting and his wife could use help with correspondence." "I can read and write," Olivia confirmed. "My mother insisted on education even though we had little money for it. She said knowledge was the one thing no one could take from you." The irony of that statement hung in the air, unspoken but present. So much had been taken from her. But Lucas was right, her essential self, her mind, her capacity to hope and dream and choose, those things remained. Over the next day and a half of travel, Olivia found herself relaxing in increments. Lucas and his men treated her with unfailing respect, never making crude jokes or inappropriate comments. They shared their food and water freely, and Lucas taught her small things about reading the land, identifying plants, understanding the patterns of weather in the sky. "See those clouds building to the west," he said, pointing on the afternoon of the second day. "That means rain by evening. We will need to secure the camp carefully." "How can you tell?" Olivia asked, shading her eyes to look where he indicated. "The shape and color. Those tall clouds that look like anvils, they bring storms. And see how the wind is picking up. The land tells you what is coming if you learn to read it." She found herself fascinated by his knowledge, by the way he moved through the world with such easy competence. Lucas was not an educated man in the formal sense. He had told her he could read only a little and write his name, but he was deeply intelligent, his understanding of the natural world profound and instinctive. That evening, as they crested a rise, Lucas pointed to a sprawling collection of buildings in the valley below. "Chisholm Ranch," he announced. "Home." Olivia's stomach clenched with nervousness. This was the moment of truth. Would they accept her? Would they give her work, or would they turn her away? And if they turned her away, what then? Lucas seemed to sense her anxiety. "It will be fine," he said gently. "I will speak with Mr. Chisholm myself. You have my word that I will not leave you with nothing." The ranch was even larger than it had appeared from the rise. Corrals full of cattle stretched in every direction, and the main house was a substantial structure of adobe and wood, built to withstand the harsh climate. Smaller buildings surrounded it: bunkhouses, barns, storage sheds, a cookhouse with smoke rising from its chimney. People moved about with purposeful activity, and several stopped to watch as Lucas and his men rode in with their small herd. Olivia felt their eyes on her and wished she could disappear. She was still wearing the inappropriate dress from the brothel, still looked like something dragged through the desert despite the blanket and oversized boots. Lucas dismounted and came to help her down from Joseph's horse. His hands were steady on her waist, his touch brief and respectful. "Wait here," he said. "I will find Mr. Chisholm." He strode toward the main house with confidence, and Olivia stood awkwardly near the horses, trying not to meet anyone's curious gaze. Joseph and William busied themselves with the cattle, but she noticed they stayed close, a subtle form of protection. Lucas emerged several minutes later with an older man who carried himself with unmistakable authority. John Chisholm was in his 50s, Olivia guessed, with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He approached her directly, and she fought the urge to step back. "Miss Vale," he said, his voice gruff but not unkind. "Lucas tells me you are looking for work." "Yes, sir," Olivia managed, lifting her chin despite her nervousness. "I can read and write. I can cook and clean and mend. I am a hard worker." Chisholm studied her for a long moment, and Olivia had the uncomfortable feeling he could see right through her, could read the entire story of her shame and desperation. But when he spoke, there was no judgment in his tone. "Lucas also tells me you have been through difficult circumstances and are looking for a fresh start." "Yes, sir," she repeated, her throat tight. "I run a respectable operation here," Chisholm continued. "I expect honesty from my workers and a full day's work for a full day's pay." "Can you give me that?" "I can, sir." "I will." Chisholm nodded slowly. "Then we will give you a trial. 2 weeks. You will help my wife, Arabella, with household tasks and correspondence. Room and board provided, plus $2 a week if you prove satisfactory. After 2 weeks, we will decide if the arrangement should continue." Fair, $2 a week, room and board. Her own money earned through her own labor. It was more than fair. It was salvation. "Thank you, sir," Olivia said, and her voice cracked with emotion. "Thank you so much." "Thank Lucas," Chisholm said with a slight smile. He spoke highly of your character and determination. That means something around here. He turned to Lucas. Show her to the house. Arabella will get her settled. As Chisholm walked away, Olivia turned to Lucas, overwhelmed with gratitude. I do not know how to repay you, she said. You do not need to repay me, Lucas said. Just do good work and build yourself a life. That will be payment enough. He paused, and something vulnerable flickered in his expression. And maybe, if you are willing, you could have supper with me sometime. Just to talk. I have enjoyed our conversations. Olivia felt heat rise in her cheeks, but it was not the shameful heat she had known in Santa Fe. This was something warmer, something that felt like hope. I would like that, she said softly. Lucas's smile was genuine and bright, transforming his whole face. Good, that is good. He offered his arm, gentlemanly and proper. Come on, let me introduce you to Mrs. Chisholm. She can be intimidating, but she has a good heart. Arabella Chisholm was a handsome woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She took one look at Olivia's ragged appearance and immediately swept into action, calling for hot water and fresh clothes and treating Olivia's battered feet with gentle efficiency. You will stay in the small room off the kitchen, Arabella said as she worked. It is modest but clean and private. Your duties will include helping me with correspondence. We send and receive a great deal of business letters as well as household accounts, and whatever other tasks need doing. Can you cook? Some, Olivia admitted. Basic things. We have a cook for the main meals, but knowing your way around a kitchen is useful. I will teach you what you do not know. Arabella finished bandaging Olivia's feet and sat back, her expression softening. Lucas told my husband you have been through hardship. You do not need to share details if you do not wish, but I want you to know that here you are safe. No one will harm you or take advantage of you. Do you understand? Yes, madam, Olivia said, her voice thick. Thank you. We take care of our own at Chisholm Ranch, Arabella said simply. If you work hard and deal honestly with us, you are one of our own. Now let me show you your room and then you can rest. You look exhausted. The room was small, as promised, but to Olivia it looked like paradise. A narrow bed with clean sheets, a washstand with a pitcher and basin, a small trunk for belongings she did not yet have, and a window that looked out over the ranch yard. Most importantly, it had a door with a lock on the inside. After Arabella left, Olivia locked the door and sat on the bed, running her hands over the rough cotton sheets. She could scarcely believe it was real. A job, a room of her own, respectful treatment. And Lucas Tanner, with his steady eyes and gentle voice, wanting to have supper with her just to talk. She lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling, and for the first time in 3 years, she felt something that resembled peace. The next weeks passed in a blur of activity. Olivia threw herself into her work with fierce determination, helping Arabella with correspondence, organizing household accounts, mending linens, and learning the rhythms of ranch life. She proved quick and capable, and Arabella began to trust her with increasingly important tasks. The other workers accepted her with minimal fuss. In a place as isolated as Chisholm Ranch, new people were always arriving and leaving, and no one pried too deeply into anyone's past. Olivia appreciated the anonymity, the chance to simply be herself without explanation or judgment. Lucas kept his promise about supper. 3 times in those first 2 weeks, he appeared at the main house in the evening, freshly washed and with his hat in his hands, asking politely if Olivia might take a meal with him. They ate in the cookhouse, or sometimes outside under the stars, and they talked about everything and nothing. Lucas told her about the cattle drives he had been on, the long months on the trail pushing herds north to market. He described the vastness of the plains, the danger of river crossings, the camaraderie of the men who lived and worked together under open sky. Olivia told him about the books she had read as a child, the stories that had transported her to other worlds. She talked about her parents, about the small happiness of farm life before illness stole it away. She found herself laughing at Lucas's stories, something she had not done in so long she had almost forgotten how. "You have a beautiful laugh," Lucas said one evening, and then immediately looked embarrassed. "I am sorry. That was too forward." "No," Olivia said quickly. "It was kind. Thank you." They looked at each other across the rough wooden table, and something electric passed between them. Olivia felt her heart beat faster, and she saw Lucas swallow hard, his eyes dark in the lamplight. "Olivia," he said slowly, "I know it is soon, and I know you have been through terrible things. I do not want to pressure you or make you uncomfortable, but I need you to know that I care about you. Not just as someone I helped, but as a person. As a woman, I admire and respect and think about more than is probably sensible." Olivia's breath caught. She had thought she was broken, incapable of feeling anything tender or romantic after what she had endured. But sitting here with Lucas, she felt something awakening inside her, something warm and tentative but undeniably real. "I care about you too," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But Lucas, I am not sure I know how to be cared for properly. I am not sure I know how to be in a relationship that is not about transaction or ownership." "Then we will figure it out together," Lucas said, reaching across the table to take her hand. His palm was rough with calluses, his touch careful. "We will go as slow as you need. I am not going anywhere." Tears pricked at Olivia's eyes. "You are a good man, Lucas Tanner." "I am trying to be," he said simply. "For you, I want to be." At the end of the 2-week trial, John Chisholm called Olivia into his office. She went nervously, unsure despite the positive feedback she had received from Arabella. "Miss Vale," Chisholm said, gesturing for her to sit, "my wife speaks very highly of your work. She says you are efficient, intelligent, and trustworthy. She would like you to stay on permanently." Relief flooded through Olivia. "I would like that very much, sir." "Good. We will increase your pay to $3 a week, given your abilities with reading and accounting. You have a place here as long as you want it." "Thank you, sir," Olivia said, fighting back emotional tears. "You have no idea what this means to me." "I think I do," Chisholm said, his expression softening slightly. "Everyone deserves a chance to start over, Miss Vale. Make the most of it." She did. Over the following months, Olivia grew into her role at the ranch. She became indispensable to Arabella, managing not just household affairs, but also helping with the business side of the operation. She had a head for numbers, and Chisholm began to rely on her to keep accurate records of cattle sales and expenses. More importantly, she began to heal. The nightmares that plagued her initially grew less frequent. The flinching at unexpected sounds or movements gradually diminished. She started to remember who she had been before Santa Fe, and more importantly, she started to discover who she could become after. Lucas was patient beyond measure. Their courtship, if it could be called that, progressed in tiny increments, holding hands across the dinner table, walking together in the evening after work, Lucas teaching her to ride properly, his hands steadying her waist as she learned to control the horse. The first time he kissed her, it was 4 months after they had met. They were standing by the creek where he had first found her, returned there on a Sunday afternoon when both had time away from work. The water sparkled in the sunlight and wildflowers dotted the banks, and Lucas had been telling her about his dreams of someday having his own small ranch. He stopped mid-sentence and looked at her, and Olivia saw the question in his eyes. She nodded, just slightly, and he leaned in slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away. When his lips touched hers, gentle and reverent, Olivia felt something inside her settle into place. This was right. This was real. "I love you," Lucas said when they parted, his forehead resting against hers. "I have loved you since that first morning when you came out from behind those rocks, so broken and so brave. I love you, Olivia Vale, and I will spend the rest of my life proving that you can trust me with your heart." Olivia was crying, but they were good tears. "I love you too," she whispered. "I did not think I could ever feel this way, but I do. I love you, Lucas." They stood there for a long time, holding each other, the creek singing its endless song and the New Mexico sun warm on their shoulders. But not everything was easy. 6 months after Olivia arrived at Chisholm Ranch, two men rode in asking after a red-haired woman who had run away from an establishment in Santa Fe. Olivia was in the main house when they arrived, and she happened to look out the window and see them talking to one of the ranch hands. Terror seized her. They had found her. Madame Rousseau's men had finally tracked her down. She backed away from the window, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. Lucas was out on the range, too far away to help, but Arabella came in and immediately saw her distress. "Olivia, what is wrong?" "Those men," Olivia managed, pointing to the window with a shaking hand. "They are looking for me." Arabella looked out, her expression hardening. "Stay here," she commanded and marched outside with surprising ferocity. From the window, Olivia watched as Arabella confronted the two men, her posture rigid with anger. She could not hear the words, but she saw Arabella gesturing sharply, saw John Chisholm emerge from one of the barns and join the conversation. The two men argued, but Chisholm's stance was implacable. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, the men mounted their horses and rode away. Arabella returned to the house, her face flushed. "They are gone," she said firmly, "and they will not be back. My husband made it clear that there is no one here matching their description and that they are not welcome on Chisholm property." "But they saw me," Olivia said, her voice thin with fear. "When I worked in the house, they might have seen me." "They described a woman named Ruby," Arabella said. "A woman with painted face and elaborate dresses. You are Olivia Vale, a respectable woman who works for me. You look nothing like their description, and even if you did, my husband and I would not turn you over to those vultures." "They could come back," Olivia whispered. "They could cause trouble for you." "Let them try," Arabella said with steel in her voice. "This is New Mexico territory, not some lawless border town. We have rights and protection here. More importantly, you are under our protection now. Do you understand? You are safe." Olivia wanted to believe her, but the fear had burrowed deep. When Lucas returned that evening and heard what had happened, his face went dark with fury. "Did they threaten you?" he demanded. "No," Olivia said. "They never came close. Mrs. Chisholm and Mr. Chisholm sent them away." "Good," Lucas said, but his jaw was tight. "But I am not taking chances. From now on, when I am out on the range, I will make sure someone is watching out for you. Joseph or William, someone I trust." "Lucas, you do not need to—" "Yes, I do," he interrupted, his voice intense. "Olivia, you are everything to me. I will not let anyone take you or hurt you. Do you understand? I would die before I let that happen." The fierce protectiveness in his eyes should have frightened her, but instead Olivia felt cherished, safe. "I understand," she said softly, taking his hands. "But please be careful. I do not want you getting hurt because of me." "You are worth any risk," Lucas said simply and kissed her forehead. The men did not return, but the incident left Olivia shaken. For weeks she startled at every unfamiliar voice, every unexpected visitor to the ranch. Lucas stayed close when he could, and true to his word, arranged for someone to always be nearby when he could not be there himself. Slowly, gradually, Olivia's fear subsided. Life on the ranch continued its steady rhythm, and she began to believe that maybe, just maybe, she truly had escaped her past. A year after Olivia arrived at Chisholm Ranch, Lucas asked her to marry him. They were sitting on the porch of the main house on a warm evening, watching the sun set over the distant mountains. He had been unusually quiet all day, and Olivia had noticed him fidgeting with something in his pocket. "Olivia," he said finally, turning to face her. "This past year has been the best of my life. You have made me happier than I ever thought possible. I know we have talked about the future, about building a life together, but I need to make it official. I need to ask you properly." He slid off the bench and knelt in front of her, pulling a simple gold ring from his pocket. "This was my grandmother's," he said. "It is not fancy, but it is real, and it is given with real love. Olivia Vale, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that you made the right choice when you trusted me?" Olivia's vision blurred with tears. She had never imagined this moment would come, had never thought she would be the kind of woman a good man would want to marry. But Lucas was looking at her with such hope and love that she could not doubt his sincerity. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking. "Yes, Lucas, I will marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly, like it had been made for her. Then he pulled her into his arms, lifting her off the bench and spinning her around, both of them laughing and crying at the same time. They were married 2 months later in a simple ceremony at the ranch, with John and Arabella Chisholm standing as witnesses, and most of the ranch hands attending. Olivia wore a simple blue dress that Arabella had helped her sew, and Lucas wore his best shirt and pants, his hair slicked back and his face shaved clean. When the circuit preacher asked if anyone objected to the union, Olivia held her breath, half expecting Madame Rousseau's men to burst through the door. But there was only supportive silence, and then Lucas was lifting her veil and kissing her as his wife, and the small gathering erupted in cheers. The Chisholms gave them 3 days away from work as a wedding gift, and Lucas took Olivia to a small cabin on the far edge of the ranch property, a lined shack used during cattle drives but empty now. They spent those 3 days learning each other, not just physically but emotionally, building the foundation of their marriage with honesty and tenderness. Lucas was patient with Olivia's occasional hesitations, the moments when old fears would surface. He never pushed, never demanded, always waited for her to come to him willingly. And Olivia found that with Lucas, physical intimacy was nothing like what she had known in Santa Fe. This was about connection, about joy, about two people choosing each other freely. "I am so lucky," Lucas said one night as they lay together, Olivia's head on his chest, his fingers running through her hair. "I still cannot believe you are my wife." "I am the lucky one," Olivia countered. "You saved my life, Lucas, not just physically, but in every way that matters. You gave me back myself." "You saved yourself," Lucas said firmly. "I just helped a little." They returned to the ranch and moved into a small house on the property, formerly occupied by a foreman who had moved on. It was modest, 2 rooms and a kitchen, but it was theirs, and Olivia took fierce joy in making it a home. She sewed curtains for the windows and planted a small garden outside the door. Lucas built her a shelf for the few books she was slowly acquiring, saved up from her wages. Olivia continued to work for Arabella, though in reduced hours now that she had her own household to manage. Arabella had become more than an employer. She was a friend, a mentor, someone who had shown Olivia what strength and grace looked like in a woman. Lucas continued his work with the cattle, but he had started saving money toward his dream of his own ranch. Every dollar not needed for immediate expenses went into a tin box hidden under their bed, and they would count it together sometimes, dreaming of the future. 5 more years, Lucas said one night as they counted. Maybe less if we are careful. Then we can buy land, start our own herd. What will we call it? Olivia asked, enchanted by the dream. Whatever you want, Lucas said, kissing her temple. It will be ours together, so we decide together. 2 years into their marriage, Olivia realized she was pregnant. The discovery filled her with a complicated mix of emotions. Joy, certainly, at the thought of a child made from love with the man she adored. But also fear that her past would somehow taint this innocent life, fear that she would not know how to be a mother, having had her own taken so young. Lucas was nothing but excited. "A baby," he kept saying, his hand on her still flat stomach, wonder in his voice. "Our baby. Olivia, we are going to have a family." His pure happiness helped ease her fears, and as her body changed, as the baby grew inside her, Olivia found herself falling in love with the life she carried. This child would be born free, born wanted, born into love. That was everything. Arabella helped prepare her for childbirth, sharing both practical advice and emotional support. "You are stronger than you know," Arabella said. "You have survived so much. You will survive this too, and the reward is greater than any pain." Olivia went into labor on a hot August afternoon in 1881. Lucas had been out checking fences and returned to find Arabella timing contractions in their little house. His face went white with panic, but Arabella shooed him out, telling him to fetch the midwife from the nearest town and then make himself useful elsewhere. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Olivia thought she could not endure another moment of pain. But she thought of Lucas, of the life they were building, of the child fighting to be born, and she found strength she did not know she possessed. Near dawn, as the sky was just beginning to lighten, her son was born. The midwife placed him in her arms, this tiny, perfect creature with dark hair like his father and strong lungs that announced his arrival to the world. Lucas was allowed in then, and he approached the bed with tears streaming down his face. "A son," he whispered, touching the baby's tiny hand with one rough finger. "Olivia, we have a son." "What should we name him?" Olivia asked, exhausted but elated. Lucas thought for a moment. "James," he said, "after your father, James Tanner." Olivia's heart swelled. "James," she repeated, looking down at her son. "Welcome to the world, James Tanner." Motherhood was harder than Olivia had anticipated, but also more rewarding. James was a fussy baby, prone to colic and late-night crying, but every smile, every small milestone filled her with fierce pride. Lucas was a devoted father, taking turns walking the floor with James at night, changing diapers without complaint, gazing at his son with undisguised adoration. The Chisholms were equally smitten, treating James like a grandchild. Arabella knitted blankets and tiny clothes, and even stern John Chisholm could be found making ridiculous faces to coax a smile from the baby. Life settled into a new rhythm, busier and more chaotic but full of joy. Olivia reduced her work hours further to care for James, but she still helped with correspondence and accounts when she could. Lucas worked longer hours, more determined than ever to save enough for their own place now that they had a child to provide for. When James was a year old, Lucas came home one evening with barely contained excitement. "I heard about land," he said, his eyes bright. "About 50 miles northwest of here, near the Hondo River. Good grazing land, unclaimed. The price is fair, and with what we have saved, we could afford it." 50 miles, Olivia repeated, her heart sinking. "That is far from the Chisholms, from everyone we know." "I know," Lucas said, taking her hands. "And I will not make this decision without you. If you want to stay here, we stay. But Olivia, this could be our chance. Our own land, our own ranch. A legacy to pass to James and any other children we might have." Olivia thought about it carefully. The Chisholms had been so good to them, had given her a chance when she had nothing. Leaving felt like abandonment. But she also understood Lucas's need to build something of his own, and she shared that dream. They could not live on someone else's property forever. "We should talk to Mr. and Mrs. Chisholm," she said finally. "Make sure they understand we are grateful, that we are not leaving because of anything they did." The Chisholms, when told of the plan, were supportive if sad to see them go. "You have been good workers and good friends," John Chisholm said. "But a man needs to build his own future. We understand that. You will always be welcome here if you need anything." Arabella hugged Olivia tightly. "You came here with nothing and are leaving with everything that matters: a good husband, a beautiful son, skills and confidence and hope. I am so proud of the woman you have become." The preparations took several months. Lucas made trips to survey the land and file the claim. He bought a small herd of cattle and essential equipment. Olivia packed their modest belongings and tried not to think too hard about leaving the only place where she had felt safe since her escape. They left Chisholm Ranch on a clear morning in the spring of 1883. Their belongings loaded onto a wagon, James perched between them, almost 2 years old now and chattering constantly. The Chisholms and many of the ranch hands gathered to see them off, and there were tears and well wishes and promises to visit. As they rode away, Olivia looked back once at the place that had saved her life. Then she turned forward, toward the future, toward the land that would be theirs. The journey took 3 days, and when they finally reached the property Lucas had claimed, Olivia's breath caught. It was beautiful rolling grassland dotted with trees, a clear river cutting through the western edge, mountains visible in the distance. Raw and wild and full of possibility. "What do you think?" Lucas asked nervously. "I think it is perfect," Olivia said honestly. "I think we can build a good life here." Lucas's smile could have lit the darkness. "Then let us get started." The first year was brutally hard. They lived in a tent while Lucas built a small cabin, working dawn to dusk to get it finished before winter. Olivia helped where she could, caring for James while also cooking, washing, and doing whatever tasks Lucas needed. The cattle required constant attention, and predators were a constant threat. Money was tight, food sometimes scarce, but they were building something together, and that made every hardship bearable. The cabin took shape, modest but solid. The cattle multiplied. They made the acquaintance of a few neighboring ranchers, isolated homesteaders like themselves, and traded labor and supplies as needed. By the time James was 3, they had a functioning ranch. Small by most standards, barely 50 head of cattle and a handful of horses, but it was theirs, bought with their own money and built with their own hands. Lucas had carved a sign for the gate. "Tanner Ranch," simple and proud. The first time Olivia saw it, she cried, "What is wrong?" Lucas asked in alarm. "Nothing is wrong," she said through tears. "Everything is right. We did it, Lucas. We actually did it." He held her close, James squirming between them, and they stood there looking at their sign, their land, their future. Life on their own ranch was isolated but fulfilling. Olivia had never been afraid of hard work, and she threw herself into helping Lucas build their operation. She learned to handle cattle, to ride with real skill, to shoot when necessary to protect their stock from predators. She kept meticulous records of their finances and breeding records for the cattle. She also discovered she was pregnant again, and in the fall of 1884, she gave birth to a daughter. This labor was easier than the first, and when the midwife, a neighbor woman who lived 10 miles away, placed the baby in her arms, Olivia felt only joy. "A girl," Lucas said, his voice thick with emotion. "We have a daughter." "What should we name her?" Olivia asked. "You choose," Lucas said. "You carried her, you brought her into this world. You name her." Olivia thought of all the women who had helped her along the way. Her mother, gone too soon. Arabella Chisholm, who had given her a chance, the midwife who had just helped deliver her child, strong women who had shaped her life. "Sarah," she said. "Sarah me Tanner." "Perfect," Lucas said, kissing his wife's forehead. "Absolutely perfect." James, now 3, was fascinated by his baby sister. He would sit beside Olivia's chair for hours, watching Sarah with solemn eyes, occasionally reaching out to touch her tiny hand with careful reverence. "My baby," he would announce to anyone who would listen. "My Sarah." The years passed in a blur of seasons. The ranch grew slowly but steadily. Lucas proved to have a good eye for cattle, and their herd earned a reputation for quality. They were never rich, but they made enough to live comfortably and to expand bit by bit. James grew into a sturdy, serious boy who loved working alongside his father. Sarah was more adventurous, constantly exploring and getting into mischief, keeping Olivia on her toes. When Sarah was 2, Olivia gave birth to another son whom they named Thomas. And 2 years after that, another daughter, Elizabeth. 4 children, a working ranch, a husband who still looked at her like she hung the moon. Olivia's life was full beyond measure. Sometimes she would stop in the middle of her daily tasks and just look around, marveling at how far she had come from that desperate girl running through the streets of Santa Fe. She had nightmares still, occasionally, where she was back in the red velvet room, trapped and helpless. But she would wake to find Lucas beside her, his arms around her, his voice murmuring comfort. And the nightmare would fade, banished by the reality of the life she had built. When James was 10, he asked about Santa Fe. They had never spoken of it in front of the children, but James was observant and had overheard fragments of conversations between his parents over the years. "Mother," he said one evening as Olivia tucked him into bed, "why do you never want to go to Santa Fe? Father says we could sell cattle there, but you always say no." Olivia's heart clenched. She and Lucas had discussed how they would handle this conversation someday, but she had hoped that day was further off. "Santa Fe is a place from my past," she said carefully. "Before I knew your father, before I was happy. I do not like going there because it reminds me of sad times." "What happened there?" James asked with a child's direct curiosity. Olivia took a breath. "When I was young, I made some bad choices because I did not have any good options. I ended up in a place where I was not treated well, where I was not free to leave. Eventually, I escaped, and your father found me and helped me. That is how we met." James processed this with his characteristic seriousness. "Did bad people hurt you?" "Yes," Olivia said honestly. "But I got away, and I built a new life, and now I have you and your father and your sisters and brother, and I am happy. The past does not control me anymore." "I am glad father found you," James said, hugging her fiercely. "I am glad you are my mother." "I am glad I am your mother too," Olivia said, holding him close, tears threatening. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me, you and your siblings and your father." She told Lucas about the conversation that night, and he held her as she cried, releasing emotions she had not realized she was still carrying. "We have beautiful children," Lucas said, "and they came from you, from your strength and courage. You gave them life, Olivia. Never doubt that you are a good mother, a good person." "I know," Olivia said. "Most days I know, but sometimes the past creeps in." "Then I will remind you," Lucas said simply. "Every day if I have to. You are Olivia Tanner, a rancher, a mother, a wife. You are strong and brave and good. That is who you are." The ranch continued to thrive. By the time James was 15, they had nearly 200 head of cattle and had built a larger house to accommodate their growing family. Lucas hired a few hands to help during busy seasons, and Olivia managed the household and accounts with the same efficiency she had once brought to the Chisholm ranch. They made occasional trips to the nearest town for supplies, and Olivia had built friendships with other ranch wives in the area. She was respected in the community, known as a fair dealer and a woman who worked as hard as any man. No one knew about Santa Fe, about the brothel, about Ruby. That girl was long gone, buried under years of honest living and hard-won happiness. In 1895, when Olivia was 37 and Lucas 42, they received word that John Chisholm had died. They made the trip back to Chisholm Ranch for the funeral, bringing all 4 children, now ranging from 13 to 6. Arabella Chisholm, older and frailer but still sharp-eyed, embraced Olivia tightly. "Look at you," she said, pulling back to study her. "Look at what you have become. John would have been so proud." "He gave me a chance when no one else would," Olivia said, tears streaming down her face. "I owe him everything." "You owe him nothing," Arabella said firmly. "You earned your place here through your own merit, and you took that chance and built something wonderful. That is all on you, my dear." They stayed for several days, attending the funeral and visiting with old friends. Many of the ranch hands Olivia and Lucas had worked with were gone, moved on or passed away, but a few remained and greeted them warmly, standing in the yard where she had first arrived, terrified and desperate. Olivia felt the full weight of time and change. That girl was so far removed from the woman she had become that they barely seemed like the same person. "What are you thinking?" Lucas asked, coming up beside her and slipping an arm around her waist. "I am thinking about how far we have come," Olivia said, "how much life we have lived. I am thinking that I am grateful, so deeply grateful for every single day. Even the hard ones," Lucas asked with a slight smile. "Especially the hard ones," Olivia said, "because they taught me what I was capable of. They taught me that I could survive anything as long as I had hope and determination and love." Lucas kissed her temple. "You are the strongest person I know," he said, "and I love you more every single day." They returned to their ranch, to their children, to the life they had built with sweat and sacrifice and unwavering commitment. The years continued to pass, bringing both joy and sorrow. A drought one year that nearly broke them, a banner year that allowed them to expand, James falling in love and eventually marrying, Sarah heading off to a teacher's college in the East, Thomas showing a talent for working with horses, Elizabeth proving to be as stubborn and strong-willed as her mother. Through it all, Lucas and Olivia remained each other's constant, their love deepening with every passing season. They had weathered so much together, built so much together, that they were no longer 2 separate people but a single unit, stronger together than either could have been alone. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Lucas surprised Olivia with a trip. He arranged for the older children to watch the younger ones and took her back to the creek where they had first met. It looked exactly the same. The water still sparkled over smooth rocks, wildflowers still dotted the banks, the sky still stretched endless and blue overhead. "I found you here," Lucas said, taking both her hands. "Broken and brave and more beautiful than you knew. And I fell in love with you right here, right in this spot, though I did not fully realize it yet. I was so afraid," Olivia remembered. "I thought my life was over." "It was just beginning," Lucas said. "We were just beginning. And I want you to know, Olivia, that these 20 years have been the greatest gift of my life. You made me a better man. You gave me a family, a purpose, a reason to wake up grateful every single morning. I would do it all again, every hard moment, every struggle, just to end up right here with you." Olivia was crying, but they were tears of pure happiness. "I love you," she said. "I will love you until the day I die and beyond. You saved me, Lucas, not just from that place in Santa Fe, but from despair, from believing I was worthless. You gave me back my name, my identity, my future." You gave me everything." Lucas pulled her into his arms, and they stood there by the creek, holding each other, two people who had found each other in the wilderness and built something beautiful and lasting. The years marched on. James took over more of the ranch operations, proving to be as capable as his father. Sarah returned from college and married a lawyer in the territorial capital, though she visited often. Thomas started his own horse breeding operation on land adjacent to the family ranch. Elizabeth, the baby, showed every sign of being the one to carry on the family legacy, as passionate about ranching as her father and older brother. Lucas's hair turned gray, then white. Olivia's face gained lines around her eyes and mouth, marks of decades spent squinting into the sun and smiling at her family. Their bodies grew stiffer, less willing to handle the long hours of hard labor, but their spirits remained strong. In 1905, they became grandparents for the first time when James's wife gave birth to a son. Holding the tiny baby, looking into his scrunched-up face, Olivia felt the circle of life completing itself. She had come from nothing, built everything, and now that everything was continuing into a new generation. "What will you name him?" she asked James. "Lucas," James said, smiling at his father. "Lucas James Tanner, after his grandfather." Lucas Sr., tough cowboy that he was, wept openly at the honor. More grandchildren followed, 7 in total over the next decade. The ranch house was always full of noise and activity, children running underfoot, the sounds of laughter and occasional squabbles filling the air. On quiet evenings, when the grandchildren had been collected by their parents and the ranch had settled into night sounds, Lucas and Olivia would sit on their porch, holding hands, watching the stars emerge one by one. "Did you ever imagine this?" Olivia asked one such evening. She was 62 now, Lucas 67, and they had been married for 40 years. "When you first found me, did you ever think we would end up here?" "I hoped," Lucas said. "I saw something in you that first morning, something unbreakable. I hoped that if I could help you find your feet, you might do something extraordinary with your life. But this—" He gestured broadly at the ranch, at the house they had built, at the family they had created. "This is beyond anything I imagined. You are beyond anything I imagined." "We did it together," Olivia said. "Every step of the way, we did it together." "Together," Lucas agreed, squeezing her hand. Lucas died in the winter of 1912, peacefully in his sleep after a lifetime of hard work and deep love. He was 74 years old. Olivia, kneeling beside their bed, holding his still warm hand, felt like her heart had been torn from her chest. They had had 47 years together, more than most people could dream of, but it was not enough. It would never have been enough. The funeral was attended by everyone in the county, it seemed. Lucas had been respected and liked, known for his fairness and integrity. Olivia stood at the graveside, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, and watched as they lowered the man she loved into the earth. In the days and weeks that followed, she moved through life in a daze. The ranch felt empty without Lucas's presence. Food had no taste. Colors seemed muted. She had known, intellectually, that one of them would have to live without the other eventually, but knowing and experiencing were vastly different things. James tried to convince her to move into his house, to let him take care of her, but Olivia refused. "This ranch is my home," she said. "Your father and I built it together. I will stay here as long as I am able." Slowly, painfully, she learned to live with the loss. She found comfort in her children and grandchildren, in the routines of ranch life, in the memories of 47 years of happiness. She talked to Lucas sometimes, out loud, telling him about the day's events, asking his opinion on decisions that needed to be made. It helped. She lived another 8 years, dying peacefully in 1920 at the age of 62. Her children were with her, holding her hands, telling her it was all right to let go. "Tell father I love him," she whispered. "Tell him I am coming." "He knows, Mother," James said, tears streaming down his weathered face. "He is waiting for you." Olivia smiled, and then she closed her eyes and slipped away, released from the body that had served her so well for so long. They buried her beside Lucas under the wide New Mexico sky, on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together. The gravestone was simple: Olivia Vale Tanner, 1858–1920. Beloved wife, mother, and grandmother, she chose freedom and built a legacy. The ranch continued, passed down through generations of Tanners, each adding their own chapter to the story. But it all began with a desperate girl running through the night and a cowboy who saw her worth when she could not see it herself. It began with a chance meeting at a creek, with an offer of help given freely, and accepted with trembling hope. It began with two people who found each other in the wilderness and built something that would last long after they were gone. And that, in the end, was the greatest triumph of all. Not just that Olivia escaped the place that sold her body, but that she reclaimed her name, her identity, her future, and used it to create something beautiful and lasting. She was not defined by what was done to her, but by what she chose to do afterward. She chose love, she chose work, she chose life. And in making those choices, she became exactly who she was always meant to be. Olivia Vale Tanner, a woman who transformed her pain into purpose and her desperation into determination, who built a family and a legacy on the foundation of hope and hard work, and the unwavering belief that tomorrow could be better than yesterday. The story did not end with her death. It lived on in her children, her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren. It lived in the ranch that still bore the Tanner name. It lived in the lessons she taught about courage and resilience, and the power of choosing yourself even when the world tries to make you forget who you are. She escaped the place that sold her body. A cowboy gave her work that gave her back her name. And together, they built a love story for the ages, one that proved that it is never too late to start over, never too late to find hope, never too late to become who you were always meant to be.